We're going to learn how to solve an inequality, and you're going to find that it's very similar to solving equations, except for just really two major things. So inequalities can be solved. So we'll type that in there. Can be solved just like an equation or like an equality, either one, equation, but with a few exceptions, which is what I just said. Asians. Okay. So first of all, the variable, just like when we solved the equations, the variable must be alone or isolated on one side of the inequality. So that means like if you have 3x is greater than 6, you can't leave the 3 with the x. Or even if you have negative x, you have to get it to just plain x. You isolate the variable by using those inverse operations like we're used to, or opposite. And then the inequality must remain balanced, which again is just whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. And this number 4, you might want to underline this and put a big star here. This is the only rule you have to remember. And I will either explain this in more detail or I might already have explained this. So when you multiply or divide by a negative number, the inequality sign is flipped. So if it was greater than, it becomes less than, and then you keep everything else the same. And we will talk into more detail, or maybe we already have, on why we have to do that. But it's only when you multiply or divide and only by a negative. So that means the number with the variable is negative. So, all of these you solve like regular. So on this one, you're going to minus 5 on both sides. So I'm going to go ahead and try to use my pen. Hopefully it works. We are going to, and you can draw your river if you need to. Oh, this stupid thing. We're going to minus 5. This is where it comes in really important that we keep the variable and everything on the side that it stays on. So we have n is less than or equal to 11. So remember, that doesn't mean the answer is 11. You cannot put the equal sign because it could be 11, but it's also everything less than 11. So when you go to graph it, you're going to put your 11 here and maybe your 0 here to help you remember. Maybe, 13 here. It doesn't really matter. And then you're going to put your circle, maybe, and color it in if it'll let you. And then I'm going to follow my arrow that way since my variable's on the left. Okay, on this one, I'm not going to do it. You should be able to do this. You're going to add 8 to both sides. I don't really need you to check them. You can. The way you check them is you choose a number on this one, a number less than 11 or 11, and you put it in here for the n, and then you decide if whatever you put in there plus 5 is less than or equal to 16. Okay, on this one, 12 times g, so we're going to divide by 12. Okay, and then we have g is less than 4. So you're going to graph that. Okay, this is times by 3. Whoops, this is divide by 3. So we're going to times by 3. And we get p is greater than 27. And then you go ahead and graph them. If you don't, then I know you're not listening. Okay, so on the back, inequalities sometimes involve negative numbers. I'm just going to use a negative sign. So when we multiply or divide, we have to flip the sign if we're dividing by a negative. So here's an example on this one. And this is why it's important to think about what's happening. We're multiplying by negative 4. So that's why I always say, what are you going to do to both sides? I need you to think, I'm going to divide by negative 4. So since I'm dividing by a negative, because I'm going to say 22 divided by negative 4. So since I'm dividing by a negative, we keep this here. We find the answer is negative 5.5. But then we have to flip this. And that's your new answer. And then when you go to graph it, you graph it with this new answer. So you would color it in. You would color it in, and then you would draw your arrow that way. Oh, that stupid thing. I don't know why it won't let me color it. That should be colored in. And then, of course, you need to put negative 5.5 here. And if you think about it, if it's negative, your 0 should be over here. And maybe 7 is here, and you can put 5.5 there. Okay, number 6. So we're dividing by negative 2, so we should times by negative 2. So that means we're going to flip, and then we're going to have negative 10. And again, you should be listening to this video, I hope. So I'm going to skip down and show you, let's look at number 10 here. So, or no, not number 10. Yeah, number 10. So we're dividing by 8. So we need to multiply by 8 on each side. So that's an 8. So we're multiplying by 8. So it's not a negative number, even though this is negative. So we're, whoa. Oh my gosh, what did I do? Well, okay. We multiplied by 8, so we don't flip the sign. And the answer is going to be negative 24. Okay, same thing on this one. We're dividing by 6. Dividing by 6. So we don't flip the sign because it's negative 108 divided by a positive 6. So it's only when you say divide by negative or multiply by negative. So this answer would be negative 18. Okay, and then I want to go over the ones where the X is on this side, because a lot of you always wanted to flip it when we had equations. So this is where I told you it was important not to. So you need to keep it over here, if it will write for me. Okay, we have X. And then we're going to minus 10. So hopefully you're listening. And when we minus 10, we get negative 2. So we're going to read this as X is less than or equal to negative 2. So I'm going to put my 0 here. And I'm going to put my negative 2 here. And I'm going to draw a circle and color it in. Maybe. That should be colored in. There we go. And then you're going to have to figure out how you like to do it. So you can read it as X is less than or equal to negative 2. So you know numbers this way are less than. You can also realize that the variable is on the right side. So you know you got to go the opposite of going to the right. You go to the left. Or you can flip this around. When you're all done, you can flip it around with your answer. So there is that. And then I'm going to point it the other way. And so now I know I can follow that arrow. Okay. So anything that I haven't done, I want you to finish this page to show me. And I want you to make sure you graph these things that we haven't graphed. And yes, do that now.